Just think about this for a second. If I put federal law enforcement and National Guard into a nice sleepy southern town, is anyone going to riot?
Every once in a while, it's nice to see that the mainstream media eventually gets there. I've been talking about for weeks now Stephen Miller being the shadow president of the United States of America. Through several pieces of reporting, through things that he has said, we are learning that he controls, that there are cabinet members that are subordinate to Stephen Miller. Pam Bondi answers to Stephen Miller, the Attorney General of the Department of Justice. Kristi Noem reports to Stephen Miller. He calls the shots relative to the mass deportation effort. The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, reports to Stephen Miller. It's a problem. And last week, I was going to talk about this story and then did not. But now that the New Republic is on this beat, finally starting to sound the alarm about Stephen Miller being the de facto president of the United States, we're going to talk about it again because it's very important. And they wrote an article that actually covers a whole bunch of points. I'm going to read a little bit from this article. Then I'm going to play a video for you of Stephen Miller not saying when the president sends troops or when the president sends a contingency of masked secret police to a city. He says, if I do that. He refers to an administration operation as something if he does it. Just illuminating the thing I've been talking about that I keep saying it, Donald Trump, Stephen Miller is the de facto, is the shadow president of the United States. Here's the headline from the New Republic. Stephen Miller accidentally says I when discussing Trump's powers. Miller's slip of the tongue reveals who's really in charge. Has there ever been a more accurate headline written? I don't know. Stephen Miller may have just accidentally confirmed that he, not President Donald Trump, is the one calling the shots in regard to deportation raids and National Guard deployments. Quote, Illinois governor says we're provoking actions that are unlawful, Miller said on CNN on Monday. Why would the mere presence, just think about this for a second, if I put federal law enforcement and National Guard into a nice, sleepy southern town, is anyone gonna riot? Now, you're going to hear him say it himself in a second. But that statement in and of itself is coded. It is coded in white supremacy. If I send the National Guard in, if I, Stephen Miller, send National Guard troops into a nice, sleepy southern town, some just randomly pick sundown town, if I choose to send them there, is there going to be riots? No, because it's only the evil black and brown people who riot and protest against this government. That's what's coded in that statement. Miller's use of the first person is alarming here, the New Republic says, suggesting that he, an unelected deputy chief of staff, has either the complete authority or an outsized influence on the administration's most authoritarian decisions. Additionally, Miller misrepresents small southern towns and the actions of the National Guard. If hundreds of armed military members descended on some remote southern locale and started violently rounding up neighbors, employees, and friends, I'd be willing to bet that it wouldn't go so peacefully. I would agree. And then finally here, Miller made the remarks in the same interview where he claimed Trump has plenary authority after being asked whether the administration would abide by court rulings blocking his deployment of troops to American cities. That is the glitch moment that was covered by so many people last week when Miller froze after he said it, seemingly panicked that he had let the cat out of the bag relative to how they feel about Donald Trump's authority, his powers under the Constitution. They believe he can do anything, at any time, anywhere, for any cause, that he has limitless powers like a king. And obviously that is not true. Here is the moment. And I'm going to start the clip where he is chastising Boris Sanchez, denigrating him for a stupid question that he asked, acting as though he is a Donald Trump-like president of the United States.
And that's what they're doing. You know it, and I know it.
So That's not exactly a no, Stephen. Can you just unequivocally
I just
state
said, well,
that
I think
the
I said
immigration
it's a dumb
policy?
question. Okay.
Well, I appreciate
no,
that, but
and
can
it's
you?
a dumb question.
So no, this policy is not
I
designed.
thought when I said it was a dumb question, it meant no.
Well, I just want to be clear and precise. I appreciate you trying to qualify my questions, but nevertheless,
No.
I think it's a fair one that a lot of people have.
My full answer is no, that is a lie, and it's a dumb question. But you said something else baked into the premise of one of your questions. You said, well, aren't we provoking? The Illinois governor says we're provoking actions that are unlawful. Why would the mere presence, just think about this for a second, if I put federal law enforcement and National Guard into a nice sleepy southern town, is anyone going to riot? Is anyone going to try to shoot them in the face?
If,
Are they going
if someone
try to
goes
attack them in
into
the
a
street?
building
They would say,
full
this
of
is-
people in the
they
middle
would
of the
say, this is
night
great.
covering their
This is
faces without
amazing. Thank you for the
identification, without
resources.
identifying themselves, there might be concern among the community, especially if
about
American
the train
citizens
Iraqua
are
raid?
being, especially if American citizens are caught up in that, which some reportedly
we
were.
netted over 30 foreign terrorists who are members of train
And American
Iraqua,
citizens
who,
also
by the
wound up
way,
apprehended in
they
that.
They torture women and children.
All of these wild claims about how many terrorists are being captured. There's never any evidence provided. And the reason there's no evidence provided of that is because there's no due process provided for these individuals that allegations are made against. You know, our system of laws, our system of jurisprudence. And you got President Stephen Miller here, the unelected dipshit, acting as though he would be the one to deploy troops, National Guard troops, and the masked secret police of Donald Trump. Seems like a problem, does it not? That a deputy chief of staff, unelected, didn't have to go through a Senate confirmation process where there's a faction of our government, another branch with advice and consent control powers under the Constitution, also giving their go-ahead that this person be involved in the highest levels of decision-making in our government. None of that happened because Stephen Miller hasn't been confirmed, hasn't been approved by the Senate. If I, he said, put federal law enforcement and National Guard into a nice, sleepy southern town, is anybody going to riot? Well, you wouldn't do that, right? Because you're not president, right, Stephen? You arrogant little puke. Harassing a reporter for simply asking questions. And then when you get into trouble, when you get, when you freeze because you've said something stupid, then apparently he is the one who asked stupid questions. And even in his attempt there to well, here's another element of your question. When you said blah, 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 actually, it was the governor of Illinois that said that. It's just attack mode. But the overarching issue here that is most important is the fact that Stephen Miller is the acting president of the United States, the shadow president of the United States. As much as Donald Trump loves recess appointments and interim appointments to different positions that are Senate confirmed type of appointments, he's really doing a doozy with this one, appointing someone to be president of the United States in his stead as he languishes in cognitive decline. It's dangerous for all of us, especially the most vulnerable in our country, immigrants and the traditionally marginalized and oppressed, as they try to strip away voting rights and a whole host of other unconstitutional things with the backing of the United States Supreme Court, the Trump-picked United States Supreme Court. What do you think? I invite you to this conversation. We can have it in the comments below the video, wherever you're watching it. You can also call the voicemail line and leave me a brief voicemail, 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me daily@dollemore.com. I was going to get to this story this weekend, but I wanted to hold it over until the next week. Too important to get lost in some weekend shuffle with views. Anyway, I love and appreciate you very much. I'll see you next time. Be genuine. Take care of one another.